When we fail to receive support from our government, let's say veteran benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, the government analyzes the gaps and they plug it. They hire people to be in those positions to improve the overall service. But now we have the head of a large agency saying, no matter how many people they have, no matter how much money they get, it doesn't change anything. Nothing improves. What does this mean and how will it affect you? Let's get into it. According to a memo, the VA is planning to cut its workforce by about 15%, which means about 83,000 jobs. That would bring things back to the 2019 staffing levels, and the VA secretary saying this is all about focusing on veterans, which is a little strange, right? What does firing tens of thousands of people have to do with focusing on veterans? Now, there are some jobs that will be spared, some mission critical jobs to include doctors, nurses, or claims processors. Instead, they're going to be targeting roles like interior designers or DEI officers. I don't know how common it is to have interior designers at the VA, but when I worked over there, mainly what I was encountering were IT specialists and record compliance officers. Those were the main individuals I was interacting with. Now, it's true that the VA was hiring a lot during President Biden. They grew by tens of thousands. And despite all that hiring, the VA told senators that claims and backlogs got even worse, even with the new hires. He gave an example. There are some doctors, there are some nurses right now that are stuck doing admin work. They're not actually treating the patients. So why is this happening? Well, number one, there's a heavy admin requirement in any federal agency, so that's probably the first thing. The second thing is doctors and nurses need to share their insight for policy. So it doesn't make sense changing policy without having the medical professionals at the table or deeply involved with policy creation. If you have people that are not receiving the proper care, this seems more like a leadership/management issue when it comes to staffing. Stop putting people in admin roles if you need them out there providing services to veterans. To many people, cutting an agency by tens of thousands of people, that is not the answer to fix the VA's problem. Now, in addition to the 83,000 number that they have in mind, that's just a goal, keep in mind, right? So that's just what they're thinking about. They could exceed that goal, or they can come up short. That's just a loose number they're playing around with right now. And for everybody who decides early to take the deferred resignation program or to take the early retirement, the way it's being thought of right now is that could potentially save someone's job in the future when it comes to the RIF. As you can imagine, a lot of VA workers, a lot of veterans, they're not happy with what's happening at the VA right now. As the VA secretary was testifying, there was a protest outside. Veterans and Democratic lawmakers, they were rallying outside of the Capitol, holding signs that said, "Veterans health care not for sale." They called the cuts a betrayal. We have Jose, an Army veteran, who spoke out during this rally. He is a cancer survivor on VA care. And he said millions of veterans depend on the VA every day. Survivors of cancer, toxic exposure, traumatic brain injuries, and PTSD. He argued that by cutting over 80,000 people at the Veteran Affairs, it's going to impact veterans negatively. And not just that, if you look at the workforce, just take the federal government, for instance. 30% of federal workers are veterans. Same thing with the VA. It's roughly 25 to 30% they're veterans. They're part of the veteran community, meaning they were in uniform. They served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Horn of Africa, Korea, a lot of different places. And you're disparaging the workforce. Is exactly what Jose said here. He said there's a nonstop smear campaign when it comes to federal workers. And this is true. If you pay attention to the news and you listen to some of the words that have been coming out of the Trump administration, and also some of the words that have been coming out during interviews, you would see exactly what he's talking about. There's some people I talk to that are like, what are you talking about? He's never said anything negative about federal employees. You're imagining this. It never happened. Well, I'm going to give you some examples on exactly what people are talking about when they say the federal workforce has been disparaged. Quote, "They're destroying this country. They're crooked people. They're dishonest people." And, quote, "We have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have not been showing up to work." Federal workers were showing up to work. They were just not crammed in the cubicle farm. They weren't stuffed into a water closet. They were showing up and doing the work each and every day at home. Now, there's some people that as soon as you say the phrase at home, their brain can't handle it. Their brain dysfunctions and they're like, well, how can you do that? You can't do that at home. Yes, you can still work at home. The phrase not showing up to work insinuates federal workers did not have the intent nor desire to actually do work when they did. Then you have mass terminations and legal challenges. They were firing people they did not have the legal standing to fire. I don't know why that's so controversial to say. You cannot target and fire thousands of federal workers illegally. That is why it's being challenged in the courts today. When you do that, when you ignore the law and you do it anyway, that's wrong. A Democratic senator was fired up. He called the Senate hearing a disgrace and warned that slashing healthcare workers will tank the VA's quality and access. It looks pretty simple from the outside. If the issue is longer wait times, then hire more customer service representatives to answer the phone, to pick up the phone and talk to veterans. If the issue is you can't get a medical appointment for months down the line, hire more healthcare workers, people that are actually providing healthcare, not developing policy. If the issue is it takes over a year to process benefits, then hire somebody that actually processes the benefits. Once you hire the right amount of people, it is then on management. It is then on the leaders of that organization to make sure the balance is there, that you have staffing levels in the right location, that the schedules are being made appropriately. But the answer is rarely to just fire close to 100,000 people and think that's going to be the solution to the problem. Now, in a shocker, the VA also wants Congress to raise pay caps for VA doctors. Doctors can earn more in the private sector, over $100,000 more a year, depending on the type of doctor. And they're saying that they need to increase the pay to attract the talent, which is a novel concept. Because you know what else attracts people to the public sector? Stability, security, and pension. And all three of those areas are currently under attack. But let's look at the doctors, right? Let's do a side-by-side comparison. If you take a doctor in the VA right now, salary ranges between $200,000 to $250,000 a year. Private sector, general physician, you got a salary range of $250,000 to $350,000 a year. So right off the bat, we see a $50,000 to $100,000 a year difference. This is for a general doctor. When you specialize the doctor, the difference, the gap increases. It's more noticeable. VA specialists, they have a salary of $250,000 to $400,000 a year, and a private sector specialist, their range is between $350,000 and $600,000 a year. So that's up to a $200,000 a year difference. So yeah, you're not going to get the best and brightest when they're better compensated in the private sector. Now, this is a trend that you notice pretty much anywhere. If you're in the federal government or if you know federal workers, you understand that the more specialized a worker is, the bigger the pay gap, the less money that they're making in the federal government. Now, if you take an administrative specialist, somebody, let's say, with a lower skill set, then yeah, they're going to be compensated a lot better in the federal government. But if you take somebody who works in cybersecurity, if you take a programmer, if you take someone that knows AI, they can make a lot more money in the private sector. And what has drawn them here are the three things I mentioned earlier. This was largely considered a recession-proof job, a recession-proof career. And when you had a family and you needed a stable source of income, you would consider a middle-class federal government job. Now, that's pretty much getting wiped off the table at this moment. Also, with these cuts, consider 2/3 of the new hires, they're healthcare workers. Healthcare workers are going to get hit one way or the other, whether you're firing them or you're pressuring them out and you're forcing them to leave. This is what happens when you lose too many healthcare workers. Number one, you have longer wait times, you have fewer appointments, and you have delayed benefits. As the VA staff continues to get cut and decreases, this is going to impact local clinics. Maybe there are not enough nurses. Maybe there's not enough schedulers. You could be waiting months. Maybe the veteran has to drive to community care in order to be seen. And what is that? Maybe that's a 30+ minute commute. If you're lucky, could even be longer than that. So this is not the care that veterans expected, and it's not the care they earned. Now, the part of the story I get fixated on is when the secretary says increased staffing hasn't always led to better service for veterans. He said it's gotten worse in recent years, all the while we were adding people and adding money. In theory, any organization on this earth should improve if you add people and you add money. But they can't do it unless they have the leadership. It doesn't matter how much money or people that you have within an organization. If you don't have the right management, if you don't have the right leadership, it's all going to be for nothing. This comes down to misaligned priorities, poor performance metrics, and cultural resistance. So this isn't a fire workers in mass situation. This is a reevaluate your leadership situation. Now, right now, we have a lot of discussions about the budget. The budget's going to impact all federal agencies to include the VA. Some agencies, they're receiving billions of more dollars. That means that they could potentially hire more. They can update their systems. Other agencies, and most of them, are losing billions of dollars. This will have a dramatic impact. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.